Hey, welcome to another Enneagram podcast.
Yeah, that's right. Yet another Enneagram podcast. But this one's different. Another Enneagram podcast is here to help you be a better leader for your team.
We know leadership is already challenging enough, and it can be downright frustrating when your team communication breaks down.
Another Enneagram podcast is here to tell you stories of leaders just like you who are learning how to lead their teams better with the Enneagram. If you want your team to communicate better, be more productive, and love their jobs, another Enneagram podcast is for you. Hey, welcome back to another Enneagram podcast. This is one of your hosts, Ryan, with my co-host, Cody, and we are coming towards the end of our top 10 Enneagram questions series. So today we are counting down. We've got 3 questions left. Cody, ready for number 3?
I think so, man. Bring it on.
All right. Question number 3, top 10 Enneagram questions. What test should I take to find my number?
Ooh, I like it. I'll give my answer in a second, but I do want to say this, is that I kind of referenced it in the last question, my answer to the last question. But I think there are some steps to take before taking a test. And the reason I think that is because when you talk about the idea of taking I'm trying to think what the actual phrase would be, like a self-identifying assessment or something, a self-assessment or something like that.
Yeah.
Is a lot of us, and myself included, when I first took the Enneagram, answer questions based off of who we want to be versus who we currently are.
Yeah.
And so, especially when you're talking about something like the Ready, it's the test that the Enneagram Institute provides, or Ian Cron actually just released recently his IEQ 9, I think it's what it's called.
I think it only costs like $1 million to take, right? Isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't it pretty
It was
affordable?
It was like, I think it was like $70. I was like, bruh, no, thank you. So yeah, I can pay my water bill or I can take your test. No, thank you. So I think one of the things that's super helpful, if I could give any sort of maybe guidance to this, would be is read a good book. Like, if you really want to dig into this, it's going to take some work. And I encourage that. I think that to really get the most out of the Enneagram, you're going to have to put in some work. And so we referenced it a few episodes back where we did the books. We talked about different resources, and we talk about the book, The Road Back to You. And I think Enneagram ABCs, man, like that's an amazing book just to get your feet wet and start digging in. And as you read through the description of the 9 types, as you talk about wings, as you talk about different things, is it really paints a picture of what you're going to like really associate yourself with. And then I've heard different people say is like, as you're reading, the one that makes you the most uncomfortable sometimes is where you land in your dominant type. And so I think having a kind of a foundational understanding of the Enneagram, I think beginning to wrap your mind around like what self-awareness looks like, then when you step into finally taking an exam or something like that, I think there might be a little bit more I think that desire to answer based off of who you want to be will decrease. Maybe that's just my thoughts there. And then understanding things like triads and different things like that can kind of maybe help narrow the gap, because there's a lot of information there. And so trying to help yourself kind of narrow the focus into, because I think the first time I ever took the test, I got like 3 numbers that were all within like 2 or 3% of each other. And that was confusing, because then it's like, well, maybe I'm this and maybe I'm that and maybe I'm that. And so, like you said in the last episode, is that it really comes down to motivation, not what you do, but why you do it. And then there are some other things that can help provide more understanding and clarity to your dominant type. So, yeah,
absolutely. So do you have one that you would recommend or not at all?
Yeah. So I actually, the one I recommended to people is the Ready, RHETI. It's on the Enneagram Institute's website. I think it costs $12. And one of the things that's cool about that test is it does. I mean, it takes probably about 45 minutes to an hour to actually finish the exam. But
Mm-hmm.
man, when they give you your results, they also give you about 20 pages of information to help you really make sense of what you just did.
Yeah,
And then to provide a game plan and kind of plan of action for what's next. And if I can encourage you with anything, is like once you get your results, don't stop there. Like
mm.
I think you've just scratched the surface. Knowing your type really isn't going to do anything but um, probably give your mind something to weaponize, against you. And so I think there's a lot of grace for ourselves and others that's to be found in going a few steps deeper. So yeah,
For
my
sure.
thoughts.
Well, I'm just like always in a lot of agreement with you. I know that the question of assessments is a sticky one. You got people that are in both camps, right? Some people are like, yes, take this assessment, boom, done, it's great, and some people are like, no, all assessments are wrong. You should never take an assessment, right? And there are very respectable people in both camps, right? And so I fall, kind of right in the middle of those is what I tell people is that I think there are some really good assessments out there. And I think there are some really bad assessments out there. And I think that you can take an assessment, even if it's a good one, and it can be wrong, right? You can be in super stressed out mode, or like you were saying, you can answer the questions in more of an aspirational way, like the way that you want to be,
Mm,
even if it's not really how you are. So if you're going to take an assessment, you need to do it in just kind of the most average, state that you can be in. And you have to have this just really big commitment to some radical honesty when you answer the questions, like
yeah.
not, what you want to be, but how you are in reality. Like if you were to ask the people closest to you that actually know you, how, if they agreed with your answers, would they? And so yeah, I'm there with that. I also think the other thing I tell people about assessments is you typically get what you pay for. There's a lot of free assessments out there, and it's very rare that I've found a free assessment that I actually like.
Yeah.
Most of them I just don't think are very good, honestly. And the ones that I think are fairly accurate usually just tell you what your number is, and they don't give you any other information. And
Mm,
so that is just not as valuable to me. And now you can
mm,
pay for some, and I feel like when you start to be paying for assessments, they definitely get a lot better in quality. So with all those precursors said, I love that yours is the Ready, because that's not the one that I recommend. So we can have a couple of different good options here. The one that I recommend that's my favorite is probably really, really similar, is from a website called WEPS. It's
okay.
WEPSS.com. It's an acronym, but it's $10 and really similar. Like takes probably about the same amount of time. It's a couple hundred questions, which is a lot, I admit, but it's a smaller margin of error. When you have that many questions. Yeah, $10, about the same amount of time, spits out a big packet of information. That's really useful. And so I personally recommend that one. I do not recommend you try to take that on a cell phone, because I'm pretty sure that website is from 1980 something and does not work well with cell phones
Yeah.
at all. So
Yeah.
so yeah, I don't recommend that. Do it on a computer or a tablet if you're going to use that one. So yeah, that's my recommendation.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say is I've heard smarter people than me recommend this as well, but go read a book, go take an assessment. But if you know somebody that you trust that has an understanding of the Enneagram, man, go and process that with them. Take your test results and email it to them, and then meet up for coffee um, and go through that, because I think it's so helpful having somebody to help navigate, through some of this stuff, because it can be, it's a ton of information. And when you're talking about personalities and emotions and all that kind of stuff, man, the waters can get muddy pretty quickly. And
Yeah.
so that's my
Yeah.
last
I
thought.
Yeah, and I'll just throw mine in here too, like talking about whether or not even to take one, and you mentioned books and all that, and I think if I had to lean one way or another, I would lean towards people self-assessing, like through reading a book or talking to somebody who knows about it. But the reality is, I think a lot of people would rather just take an assessment. It's been my experience, if I'm just being honest. And so I think if you have the time and you have the patience, do what you were saying at the beginning and process through some of that stuff without the assessment. I don't think the assessments are necessary, but I think they can be helpful. So that's what I mean when I say I kind of land in the middle on that. So. Got it. All right. That's number 3. We only got a couple of these left. We'll be back with number 2 on the next one.
See ya.
Hey, thanks for joining us today on another Enneagram podcast.
As fellow leaders, we know it can be frustrating when it seems like you always run into the same problems on your team with the same people. But leaders just like you are learning how to lead their teams better using the Enneagram, and you can too.
So if you like what you heard today, we would love it if you would share this podcast on social media and leave a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts, preferably only good, reviews and ratings. That would be great.
If you'd like to connect with us, you can find us on Instagram. We're at Another Enneagram, or head over to our website, anotherenneagram.com.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode of Another Enneagram podcast.